عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. So last week we discussed the issue of conditions in the contract of nikah. In the issue of the conditions, we discussed that most people these days, they forego putting any conditions in their marriage contract. And it is not necessarily bad, but if there is anything that's important to a person, then it might not be a bad idea to actually put that as the condition of their nikah. So that way they will not have any disagreements about it afterwards. I don't have internet right now. Okay. So we discussed issues that are somewhat like modern issues, like for example, if you have both spouses are working, so you may discuss an agreement, for example, something like that one parent needs to stay home when there are children. Also, student loans. By the way, one of the things that we'll discuss later is that student loans can be actually used as a dowry. So let's say that one person, the wife has student loans. The husband can say that I will give you the dowry that I will pay off your student loans. And that is an acceptable way, which is that you can accept a debt that belongs to her and take the responsibility for it and pay it off, or any other debt for that matter. Also, we discussed the issue of prenuptial agreement. The issue of prenuptial agreement, which is that in case, sometimes you have the normal young couple that's getting married, usually in their 20s, they're both broke most of the times. If there happens to be a significant imbalance of wealth between them, then sometimes people don't get married because they are worried that they will get married to someone who will want to get a divorce just to get a big chunk of that money. So those people, once they are kind of, very wary and afraid that someone might come and they might just get married for what the word term is called gold digger, right? Somebody who is doing this in order to, oh, Jazakallah khair. I've been waiting for this book. Thank you. So, someone is worried about getting married to someone who might be a gold digger. So the way to avoid that and to protect against that is to actually have a prenuptial agreement in which you agree in advance, in case we go through a divorce, what would be the case in terms of a financial settlement. We discussed the issue of Islamic divorce in case of a legal divorce. Okay, so once again, if there is a legal divorce, it doesn't automatically mean that there is an Islamic divorce as well. When we get married here, we have two marriage ceremonies, so to say. We have a legal marriage and we have an Islamic marriage, because here the law is not the Islamic law. So sometimes a legal marriage ends in a court through divorce. But what's the status of the Islamic marriage in this case? And there is a gray area there. So to avoid that gray area, one of the conditions that could be put in is that, look, in case we have a legal divorce, it doesn't matter who it starts from. Normally, the scholars say right now, if the husband initiates the legal divorce, if the husband is the plaintiff in the divorce case, meaning he's the first person to go and apply for divorce, in this case, this will count as an Islamic divorce or no? What do you think? Yes, because the husband initiated it, it will count as a legal and Islamic divorce as well, because he's literally going to the court, filing paperwork saying, I want to divorce this woman. Okay? Now, if the wife initiates the divorce, usually when the husband gets the papers, does the husband have a choice to sign or not sign? The husband has a choice to make a settlement with her, like win her over, or he has to sign. Basically, the court says, okay, your wife wants a divorce from you, that's it. You can't force her to be your wife. So he has no choice. He has to basically accept it, go through that. In this case, the scholars say that we have to ask the husband that when you accepted this case and you basically went to the court for all the settlement and everything, did you intend an Islamic divorce or not? And sometimes they say, well, I had no choice but to go through the court process, but I never Islamically divorced her. So in this case, what happened is that this lady is legally divorced from her husband, but Islamically, she's still married to him. Okay, yes. This is different from khulu. Because in khulu, you're talking about the Islamic divorce process. From the wife, yes. Here we're not talking about the Islamic process. We're talking about the legal process is a process of its own. If the Islamic process didn't happen at the same time, whether it came from the husband or from the wife, it leaves a gray area in the middle, which is that she's legally divorced from him, but Islamically, she may still be married to him. Unfortunately, we are seeing cases where some women, they basically automatically assume that just because I got a legal divorce, I got an Islamic divorce as well. And that is not correct. And she's not allowed to get remarried Islamically to anyone else until this divorce is Islamically finished as well. So I would say to anybody that has this case going on, that the way to do it is that usually when the divorce, even in the court, when the divorce process is taking place, sometimes people they are not aware of the process, they don't think about this. So what I suggest to them is that even if your husband says, I'm not going to give you an Islamic talaq, but during the court process, you can ask in the legal saying that as part of this agreement, I would also like my husband to declare that he Islamically divorces me as well, in order to have that clarity. Okay? I tell the husbands, look, if let's say you didn't want to divorce her, but now it's gone, it's out of your hand, she's legally divorced from you. So don't extend this situation anymore. Just free her and free yourself. Because as long as she's your wife, you may also have some responsibility towards her as well, if you're still legally, Islamically holding her as your wife. So anyways, the point being is that some of the scholars recommend, and they say that perhaps all of the masajid should amend their nikah certificate and put it in there that if there is a legal divorce, then this will be considered Islamic divorce as well, and have both spouses sign it at the time of nikah in order to avoid that gray area. Okay, so now there are weird examples of how people kind of play with the system, but that's for another day. Okay, today we're going to talk about it's a hard topic to give it a name. Initially I said that marriage fraud. The books of fiqh, they mention defect in your spouse, but I feel awkward using the word defect with a person, right? That somebody has a defect in them. But essentially, basically, if a person gets married, whether it's a woman marrying a man or a man marrying a woman, and after you get married, you realize that something is wrong. and that whatever the purposes of marriage are not able to be fulfilled. Okay? So I just called it an unpleasant surprise after marriage. So what could be an example of this? What could be a case where a person gets married and realizes that they have been duped? It could be medical problem. Okay, it could be, for example, that so let's go back. The scholars say that let's look at the purposes of marriage. What is the purpose of marriage? Okay, one of the purposes of marriage is to have children. So if a person gets married and after they get married, they realize that this person is unable to have children. Okay, so this is now a choice of the other spouse if they want to stay in it or they don't want to stay in it, Islamically. They could say that, look, no offense to you, but I want to have children. And I would like, if it's a wife that can, but the husband cannot, she can say that, look, I would like you to divorce me so I could get remarried and I want to have children. There's nothing wrong with that. It is every person's right to have children, unless they themselves give it away. So if the wife says, look, okay, we'll get treatment, and if it doesn't get better, I will live with it, that's fine. She can do that. But if she wants to get out, she can get out. Okay? What's another purpose of marriage? Intimacy, sexual satisfaction. If a person gets married, a man or a woman, and their spouse is not willing or able to fulfill this purpose, the other spouse can again give them an option saying, hey, let's get treatment. Let's work it out. Give it some time. But if all of that doesn't work, it is the right of every person who gets married to be able to get that satisfaction from that perspective as well. Of course, one of the things that Allah tells us in the Quran is that, this is one of the wisdoms of marriage. You find this tranquility, you find this peace. And people, as teenagers, they'll tell you, man, I can't focus on anything. Because they have this on their mind, and until you're satisfied there, you can't really focus on things. So I've dealt with a case of a lady whose husband was basically unwilling to provide this. And she said, I'm willing to give him all the chance to get himself treated, go to a therapist, whatever he needs to do. But he's not willing to do so. And I can't. She says, I'm depressed. She was having image issues. A woman thinks that perhaps there's something wrong with me, that my husband is not interested in me in that way. So it's a very serious matter. So if either party is unable or unwilling, okay, sometimes they might say, I recently had a case where someone got married and they said that each time their spouse approached them, they said, I'm not ready yet. Give me more time. Okay, so okay, I'll give you time, give you time. How much time do you want? So at some point, the other spouse said, okay, well, I can't wait my whole life and figure this out 20 years later. It's now or never. So that is reasonable, and everyone has the right to do so. So, yes. Yeah. Mm. So there could be two cases. One case is that they knew about it beforehand and they did not disclose it. In this case, there's no need for mercy, right? Because they knowingly cheated someone. In some cases, they may not know, because you know what? How is a young person going to know if they can have a children or not until they try and it's not working out? In that case, it's up to the other spouse. If they feel like, you know what, this is a test from Allah, and it could be me that was tested in this way. This was an honest thing. It wasn't that they tried to, dupe me or something like that. And they may work it out. They may say, well, we can adopt children or something like that. But sometimes, so in those cases, it's a choice of the other spouse. Sometimes it's some sort of a trick. Okay, like that case I told you where the person kept saying, give me more time, give me more time. While they were saying on that matter, give me more time, they were saying, I want you to apply for my green card yesterday. Okay, so withholding one thing, but saying, do the green card application right away. Okay, so the person realized that, okay, this is what's happening here, which is that this is, some sort of a type of fraud where this person just wants to get a green card. So there are cases like that. In that case, again, we have to look at that case. Anything that causes one spouse to be disinclined towards the other. So let's say that someone gets married and they realize that their spouse, either one, they may have some sort of physical deformity. Maybe their skin is has some sort of a, weird, weird is not the right word, but some sort of an illness which makes their skin not be normal. Maybe color, maybe they have spots all over their skin, maybe they have something, anything of that sort. In this case, basically, the person says, you know what? I feel bad for this person, but I can't fulfill the purpose of marriage with this person because I'm not inclined towards that. So in this case, again, this would be their choice. Sometimes, in these days, it's kind of hard to tell, but back in the days, what used to happen is you didn't really get to see the person very much. And sometimes you got married without looking, without really talking, and then you realize maybe this person is, weight issues or, whatever issues could be there. So in this case, again, no one is forced to live in something in which they are not happy, in which they are not, forget about happy. Happiness is something that you have to make, but they are not even able to fulfill the basic purposes of marriage. If a spouse accepted the defect, okay, so at the time of nikah or before the nikah or after the nikah, they were told at some point that, look, this is the situation. Okay, this person, for example, this person cannot have children. Medically, they don't have, whatever is needed to have children. So they say, well, okay, I think that inshallah, Allah will give us children anyways. They accepted that, they continued, they start the marriage. Once they accepted it, they can't come 3 months later based on that issue saying, I want a divorce. Okay, because it's like, you already accepted it once. But of course, they could say, well, yes, I did accept it. Marriage contract cannot be canceled, what's called annulled, which means that it's not that you're going to get a divorce, we're going to say that this marriage didn't take place. We're going to cancel it. That cannot be done once the defect is accepted. At that time, afterwards, it has to be a proper divorce. And the cancellation of the marriage contract, it must be done by a judge. In our case, an Islamic judge, in like a Muslim country. In our cases, it would have to be done by, for example, like a panel of imams who will sit and they will act like a judge for that couple, for that case. Cancellation of the marriage contract before consummation due to the defect, dowry is not guaranteed for wife. Okay, so what that means is that if they did the nikah contract, but they did not move in together, they did not consummate the marriage. And at this time, the wife says, okay, well, I want to get out of this marriage. I don't want to go further. In this case, the dowry is not guaranteed, that she's not going to get a dowry. Because you know what? It could be that somebody could be a type of like a fraudster, where they just approach men and they say, I want to get married to you. They get married with a significant dowry agreed upon. And then before they consummate the marriage, just have the nikah contract, 2 days later she says, I want a divorce. Now the normal rule is that if you get the nikah contract done, then she is entitled to half of the mahr. Okay? So she could have, maybe they agreed to $20,000 in mahr, and now she's saying, I want to get out and give me $10,000 of the mahr. Okay? So if it is done before consummation, and it's the wife that's asking for the cancellation, saying, I don't, because there's some defect in him, then there's no guarantee that she will get the mahr. Cancellation after the consummation, in this case, the dowry is guaranteed. The full dowry would be guaranteed, which is that, if you already went ahead. Now, if there's a defect, after consummation, it's discovered that, okay, there's a problem. In this case, it might be some more assessment that need to be done by the judge or by the scholars in this case. A woman in a weak position must be protected by her guardian. Okay, so basically what that means is that if you are the father, you are the brother of a young girl who gets married, who may not be experienced enough in life to be able to speak up. Okay? There are many cases where if she doesn't have any support from back home, she doesn't come home and tell how she's suffering. Okay, so it's important for the family to find out, hey, is everything okay? And basically someone needs to know that, okay, is everything okay? Is there any problem? So, in Pakistani culture, what at least I've seen is that what happens is that when a marriage takes place, the wife, she goes with her husband to her new house, and they spend basically 2 or 3 days together. After that, the wife's family comes, and they take their daughter back home with them for a few days, alone. Okay? Basically to say, okay, she got this big shock, big change, and we don't know what's going on there. So the culture is now they make it like a rasam. Now they come over, they bring some food and everything, and they say, okay, we're going to take her home for a few days with us. She's going to be with us. Husband, stay here. So they take her home, and basically when she's back home in comfort of her family, the idea is that if there's anything wrong, she will let someone know. Then the family can protect her, saying, okay, something wrong is happening. So there's nothing wrong with that, yes. Consummation. Yes. So we'll talk about that in just a second. Yeah. Yes. So a mature, sane woman, meaning someone who is a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, a person who can speak up for herself. In this case, she can decide if she wants to stay or she wants to cancel. But for example, let's say like a 18-year-old girl gets married. She doesn't have enough experience in life to understand that, look, if the husband knows that he cannot have children, still he kind of cheated and didn't disclose it up front, married her. Now, she might just be in like dreamland that, inshallah, maybe something will work. But her guardian needs to speak up and help her understand that, look, you need to take a stance now. Because if you don't take it now, you might go into it 10 years, 15 years later, and then you will have no children. And then at that time, it would be a little late to turn back the things that have happened. But a woman who is a little bit older, a little bit more mature, a little bit more, you could say, can speak up for herself. She has more experience in life. She can decide, okay, look, it is what it is. I will live with it and we'll make dua. Maybe Allah will give us a miracle. That's fine. If the defect will affect more than just the wife, So let's say there is some sort of a genetic problem, there's some sort of a abnormality which may affect more than just the wife, meaning that maybe this person has some sort of a disease that will affect even the children that will be born. So in this case, the guardian has a greater role to play. Even if the wife wants to stay, the guardian needs to say, look, you are just looking at yourself, but we need to think about even the future generations. So you had one question which is going to come up with regards to what is considered consummation. So let's talk a little bit about dowry, or what's called Mahr or Sadaq. And this is mentioned in the Quran in many places, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَآتُوا النِّسَاءَ صَدُقَاتِهِنَّ نِحْلَةً فَإِن طِبْنَ لَكُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ فَكُلُوهُ هَنِيئًا مَرِيئًا. He says that, and give the woman upon marriage their bridal gift graciously. Meaning, don't throw the mahr in their face, saying, here is the money that you asked for. No, give it graciously. It's supposed to be a gift. But if they give it up willingly to you, anything of it, فَكُلُوهُ, then take it and eat it and enjoy it with satisfaction and ease. So if she forgives on her own, no problem. But you should not say, well, you were so expensive to me. Or, basically kind of rub it in her face. So the dowry or the mahr is a compensation that is specified in the marriage contract that should be satisfied. And it is given from the man to the woman. So the first thing that I want to talk about always is that unfortunately some of our cultures where there is a shortage of men and it's difficult to get their daughters married, the idea has flipped upside down, where it is now the men, the fathers of the girls who are giving a huge dowry to the husband. Okay, now, what is that? This is now, yes. In India, in Pakistan, you want to check out the tickets? Yeah. So this is a Muslim culture. These are Muslim. So first of all, it actually comes from the Hindu culture. Okay, but because we live in close proximity to the Hindu culture in these countries, so this effect has passed on this way as well. Na'udhu billah, the idea is that your daughters are a burden on you. So you need to pay someone to take your burden off. And this is Jahiliyyah. And I would say that those brothers, again, this is the role of the men of the ummah, that if they are getting married, they should take a stance. Because for many people that are coming from that culture, what happens is if you don't give your daughter anything in what's called jahez, then the expectation is that his family and him will say, your dad just got rid of you. And I am the one who took you and supported you when you had nothing. So she will be handicapped in that situation. So what the father does is that he makes her heavy with stuff. So I tell you that in what I have seen myself, right? The wife's family is giving them all the furniture of the house, giving them clothing for the whole family, not just the husband, but even his sister, his mom, his dad, his niece, everyone. They are giving them chunks of money, significant chunks of money, cash money. Sometimes they're giving them a car. Sometimes they're giving them a motorcycle. Sometimes they are giving them a house. Sometimes they're giving them a plot of land. And I have seen that they even give a lota. You know what? When this bottle that you have in the toilet to wash yourself? So they even give that. Everything, all the utensils of the house, all the appliances of the house, everything is being given by the girl's family to her, so that she's basically, it's really a sad thing that the way that it looks is that as if that they're just paying this man that, look, we will give you everything you need, just take her under your roof. And this is the opposite of Islam. It should not be this way. The Prophet ﷺ, he never let a marriage take place during his lifetime without a dowry. And there was a man who wanted to marry a woman who didn't have anything to give. So the Prophet said, find something, even if it is an iron ring. An iron ring, which is really basically real cheap, like $1 stuff. He says, do you even have that? He says, no, I don't even have that. So the Prophet says, okay, then you know some Quran, you have to teach her those surahs that you know, that's your mahr, that you have to give her. Meaning, no zero mahr. It has to be something. Even if there isn't much to give, there has to be something, even if it's just like a surah of the Quran. There's no specific or minimum amount that the Sharia sets. There's also no maximum amount that the Sharia sets. Rather, it is what could be customary, and the general guideline is that the mahr should be easy and affordable, and it should not be excessive. It should not be excessive. But what is easy and affordable for a college student is different from what is easy and affordable for the son of a billionaire. Agree or disagree? Right? If you are marrying a prince is marrying a princess, and a broke college student is marrying a broke college student. What is easy and affordable between the two is different. So whatever is easy and affordable, it shouldn't be zero. It shouldn't be very little if they can afford better, but it should also not be huge and excessive. Okay? Now, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said that being excessive in the dowry is disliked in marriage, and it is a sort of source of diminished blessings and difficulties. Meaning he's saying that if the dowry is very high, that the husband has to basically go through too much difficulty to pay that, then this type of dowry, it leads to diminished blessings in their life, and it leads to difficulties. And Umar radiallahu anh, he said that a man may increase a dowry until he feels resentment against her. Right? Meaning, the wife says, I will marry you, but you have to pay me $1 million. He wants to marry her, so he marries her, he pays her $1 million, but then he realizes that, you know what, this woman cost me $1 million right up front. So he starts to resent her. And what good will come out of that marriage where from day one you set up this situation where the husband resents the wife for the mahr that it cost him? So the general guideline is that it should be reasonable and it should not be excessive. Now, there is a discussion that what was the mahr of the wives and the daughters of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay? So according to one calculation, actually according to one hadith, which is right there on the screen, he says that the Prophet ﷺ, Umar says, he did not give any of his wives, and none of his daughters were given more than 12 uqiyah. What is 12 uqiyah? In another hadith is 12 and a half uqiyah. So I went and I actually read a research paper, and the closest number I could come up to was that the 12 and a half uqiyah in today's money is equal to $10,500. Roughly, okay, approximately $10,500. Now, some of the scholars, they say that this was the total mahr of all of his wives put together. And the Prophet ﷺ gave a mahr to 9 of his wives. So you're dividing 10,500 between 9 people. So essentially, it's coming out to around $1,000 of our time. Okay, meaning $1,000 is not necessarily pocket change, but it's not necessarily something that will make you rich or poor either way. Okay, it is something, but it's not nothing, and it's not too much. That's one argument. From my personal reading of it, what I see from these ahadith is that the 10,500 or 12.5 uqiyah is the maximum that the Prophet paid to one of his wives. Okay? So meaning, if you were to go with that, then you would say that if you want to kind of stay in that ballpark, you could say that an average mahr for today's couples getting married could be $10,000, roughly speaking. It could be paid in different forms, as we'll talk about. So it could be there. So what would you say? Do you think that in today's day and age, $10,000, is it too much? Depends on what? Yeah. 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 Yes. So this is a cultural practice of mu'akhar and muqaddam, which is that, yes, you say that you pay $10,000 at the time of nikah, and there's nothing else you have to give. But if you ever divorce her, then you have to give her another $20,000. Okay, basically the thing is that it's forgiven unless you divorce her. It's forgiven with a condition. If you divorce her, then you have to give her $20,000. And generally the scholars, they accept this, that this is a type of urf. And it's basically, if it's mutually agreed upon, then there's no problem in that. So I would say that in today's day and age, a standard college-educated person, for them, $10,000 is not nothing, and it's not unbelievably a lot. It is something that's reasonable. It's not light, but it's also not heavy. I would say that. So, if it's not a college-educated person, meaning that the type of jobs that you get, the type of industry that you're likely to go in, unless you're some sort of a trade professional like a plumber or something that you're making more money than even college graduates. But basically, 10,000 is not a bad number in my personal opinion. Let's move on. The purpose of a dowry is that it is a gift given to her, the wife, by the husband, and it shows that she is worth something and not a free item of no value. Okay, he didn't just pick her up for free. This is a psychological thing that if I tell you, okay, brothers, I got this book right here, and I don't need it anymore. If anybody wants it, you can take it. If you come and you pick up this book for free, this book is most likely just going to sit on your shelf, and you're probably not going to read it. Okay, but if I tell you, brothers, this book, I only got 10 of these copies, and 9 are sold out. And I got this last one. And if you want to get it, you have to pay me $50, the cost of what I paid for it. If you come and you pay $50 and you get this from me, you're going to say, man, I need my $50 worth of knowledge from this. You're going to go home, you're going to start reading it right away because you just paid something. So psychologically, whatever you pay for, you value it. Whatever is free, you tend to think that it's not of good value. Although, because we are living in a consumerist, this is the nature of humanity. Very few people are those people who can find something free and they value it as much as they find something for which they paid for. So, the purpose of a dowry is to let the man know that, number one, it's a gift for her, and the gift for her is that she will allow him to fulfill his sexual desire with her. She will basically open the door for him, and that she's not free. She's not a street item like a rock that you just pick up and take home, but rather she's valued something. Mahr should be specified and agreed to before marriage, but if it wasn't discussed, the marriage contract is still valid. There's a different way that it will be set. In this case, once the marriage is already done, right? The wife might say, I want $1 million. The husband already married her. They've been living together. At this time, she's not, she's not in a good negotiating position. The husband will say, okay, well, if you don't want this, you can go back to your family. So in this case, the mahr is set by looking at an average of other women from her family which are similar to her. Okay? And it could be, there's a certain way to basically look at that. Mahr can be given in different forms. It could be given in the form of property. It could be cash money. It could be jewelry. It could be land. It could be house. It could be car. It could also be in the form of taking her debt. Let's say that she owes a certain amount of money in a credit card debt. Husband says, okay, your mahr is, I will pay your debt off. I will directly pay it off for you, and this is the mahr. There's no problem in that. Also, it could be a specific service. Can anybody think of a specific service that someone would want in a mahr? Okay, so Sayyidina Musa, he says that he will work in her father's farm or in her father's enterprise for 10 years. Okay, 8 years or 10 years. In our time, what do you think in our time? What would be a specific service? Usually that's not a good idea. So it could be, for example, that I will take you for Hajj. I will take you for Umrah. I will take you on a vacation. I will give you a spectacular wedding. Any of this stuff, it could be the mahr. It could be the mahr, although I think that spending a lot of money on a wedding is, in my personal opinion, a waste of money because, it's a significant chunk of money. Things are expensive these days. And at the end of the day, I think that the money that you spend on a wedding should go to benefit the spouses themselves more. If it's a small amount, not a big deal. You can spend on a nice wedding, no problem. But if they are strapped for cash, then they should prioritize themselves over other people having a big party to attend. Okay? That's just my personal take. All right, so a few points and then inshallah we'll finish. We have about 7 points here. Number 1, that the dowry belongs to the woman and not her guardian. Okay, so this is a key point because in many, for example, at least in our culture, it's the father that spends on the wedding ceremony. The father of the bride, invites all the man's family and they have a big party. Then there's a party from the man's side as well. So the father might say, okay, look, you know what? We're going to do this big wedding and it's going to cost like $50,000. So daughter, you set your mahr to be $50,000 and then when it comes to you, you give it to me. That's not allowed. If the daughter wants to give it to her father, that's fine. It's her money. But this dowry is for the wife. It is not for her family. It is not for her family. It is also not the belonging of the husband who gave it. It is, in Islam, the property of the wife and the husband are separate. She owns her stuff without him having any part of it. So if the mahr is, for example, that he's going to give her, 10 1 pound of gold or whatever, 40 ounces of gold or whatever it is, that is now 100% her property. Once the marriage is consummated, he doesn't have a right to a single penny from that. Okay? The only exception to this is if she asks for a divorce, which we'll discuss later. If she asks for a divorce, he can say to her, give me back the mahr that I gave you. Okay? Second thing is that at the nikah, once the nikah contract is done, half the dowry becomes obligated on the man. Half the dowry. So let's say they agree to $10,000. Nikah was done. Wedding is going to be 3 months from now. Once the nikah is done, whether he gives it now or not, he is obligated to give at least $5,000. Once the wedding takes place, marriage is consummated, then the other half also becomes due as well, also becomes obligated. Now, the wife might say, yeah, you can take your time, give it to me within a year or whatever. That's between them. But he is now obligated. That $10,000 that might be in his pocket, or that might not even be in his pocket, but it actually belongs to her. If she dies after the marriage is consummated, and he didn't give her the mahr yet, he has to give the mahr, and that mahr has to then be divided as her property between her heirs. Okay? So, now, the question that you asked is, what is consummation of the marriage? What is the completion? What we say that, you might go to a store, and I'm using this because I don't have any other better example. You're making a contract to buy something. Let's say you go to a dealership and you sign a contract and you put some money down and you say, okay, they'll say, this car that you bought is going to be delivered to your house 3 weeks from now. This is the down payment that you give. Once the car is delivered, then the rest of the payment is due. In a marriage contract, it's also a contract, but it's not for buying something. It's for marrying a woman in an honorable manner. So, what is considered delivery? What is considered delivery? So, 3 things could be considered delivery. Number 1 is sexual intercourse. If that occurred, then the full mahr is now obligated upon the man. Number 2, and this is a lesser known fact, that if the man and the woman were alone together, even what is called khalwa, if they were alone together, even if they both say nothing happened, this is considered a consummation of the marriage. Why? What do you think? They could be lying. They could agree that, look, don't tell anybody what we did. It's not haram, it's halal, they are married, but because the marriage was not officially consummated yet, let's say they are supposed to get married 3 months from now, but in the middle, they go out together and they're alone, there was no one there, they were in privacy, and they spent some time together. This is considered a consummation, whether something happened or not. In this case, the full mahr is due upon the man. In case they end up getting a divorce or something like that, he might say, well, we didn't move in together yet. Well, you actually did spend time alone with her, which makes you obligated to pay the full mahr. So, yes, there is no difference in that. The third thing is, in case any one of them dies. So, if any one of them dies, if the wife dies, before the marriage was consummated, the husband still owes a full mahr to her. So now it will go as part of her property. If the husband dies, from his property, a full mahr will be paid to her. Okay, she's now a widow. She has a waiting period, but the husband's property, if he has any, has to give her a full mahr as well. Number 3, both parties can forgive their half if the divorce occurs after the contract but before consummation. So let's say nikah took place today. 3 months from now, they're supposed to get married. So let's say fights broke out, they wanted to divorce. Wife is due half the mahr, but she can say, you know what, I just want a divorce, I forgive. Husband might say, I just want a divorce, I will give you the full mahr. Just let me get out of it. Okay, just don't mind, just if things didn't work out, here's the full mahr, here's a divorce, let's end this. So both parties can forgive their half, which they have a right to. Number 4 is that everything that is taken from husband for this marriage is regarded as part of the dowry. Okay, so husband pays for the clothes for the family. Husband pays for the wife and her family to come from Australia to America for the wedding. Husband pays for their hotel stay while they're here. Husband pays for her paperwork to be done, whatever it is. Whatever expenses occur due to the marriage, the husband can count that as the dowry. And that's why clarification is very important. So either you say, okay, look, whatever expenses are there, they are separate. Besides that, you have to give $5,000 cash. Or the husband might say, look, and there should be clarification. The husband might say, look, I'm going to bring your whole family over from Australia to America. I'm going to throw a party, invite guests and everything like that. That will be the mahr. And I can't afford any more. Or I don't want to afford any more. If this is okay with you, let me know. So whatever it is that they agree on, that's fine. But remember, the reason why that's important to understand is that in case things don't work out in the gray area of the marriage period, which is, for example, the husband gave a lot of gifts to the family, and then a day or two before, the marriage got canceled. Should the family return what the man gave? Do they have to? There isn't even a contract yet. Okay? But the general rule is that the man wasn't giving these people gifts as strangers walking on the street. He was giving them these gifts in expectation of marrying their daughter. If that didn't happen, and especially if it didn't happen from the side of the girl, then they should return everything that he gave her and her family. And if there's any expenses that have already kind of been spent on something, they should also give that back as well. Okay, in order to not have anything on you, because basically that's how fraud happens. There are, for example, I've heard stories from back home that there are some families that are professional fraudster families. What they do is that they go from one. Be careful if you have kids. Okay, what they do is that they will basically approach a family saying, we have a daughter and we are interested in your son. Or the other way around, that we have a son and we are interested in your daughter. And they will say, okay, they will rent a house to invite you, that this is our house. They will put up a whole false pretense. And usually there's a lot of money involved up front. You have to give this. This is what we do in our family. We expect you to do this, you do that. Now you kind of fall for it and you do all of that stuff. And usually just a day or two before marriage, everybody just disappears with everything. Usually, in back home, what they do is that they even have all the furniture and the appliances and the clothes and the gifts and everything. They have them delivered a day or two before marriage to their house. Okay, so there was a case where in my family where this one girl was getting this one. I don't know if it was a girl or a boy. Somebody was getting married, and they turned out that it was all a fraud. It was a whole family that wasn't even a family. It was a man and a woman pretending to be the father and the mother, and a young man who was pretending to be their son, who was supposed to be doing this and that. All of that was a fake thing. So one of my uncles, he basically had some influence, so he had to get them together and basically force them to pay everything back. But this was a family that was a serial fraudster family. So these type of things do happen. So, number 5, if the dowry is paid from haram income, the marriage is still valid, but the husband is to be asked to provide it from lawful earnings. Okay, let's say that he has haram income. The wife says, look, I didn't marry you for this haram wealth. Our expectation is that we will live a lawful life. Now you're living a lawful, but this money that you have is from haram. I don't want this. Okay, so an example of this would be, for example, a politician's son or daughter, a politician's son who may have taken a lot of illegal land. The wife might say, look, I don't want this. This is something that's taken illegally from people. I won't have this. Give it to me from a halal earning. We talked about marriage without dowry. We'll skip that part. Number 7 is that if the dowry is to be paid up front, the wife has the right to abstain from having relations with the husband until the dowry is given. Okay, so if the condition is that, okay, he will pay the dowry up front in the beginning. Let's say he says, I will give you a jewelry of, worth $10,000 or $20,000. It is within her right to say, well, let's get that done, pay the dowry, and then we will go to the next level. Also, the guardian can set this rule. Okay, so let's say that your son gets married to a girl, but you say, look, today we're doing nikah, but your wedding is going to take place after the end of the semester when you graduate from college and get a job. During this time, the guardian, the wali, can tell them that, look, during this time, we don't want you to spend time alone together. We don't want you to engage in anything. You can talk on the phone, you can text, but other than that, or he might even say that, look, I want you to just keep it limited. She's in school, you are in school, focus on your studies. Okay? This is reasonable because although they have a contract, but this contract is not fully carried out yet. Okay? So there are different ways of working that, and of course, I think it might be a good idea to basically have all expectations clarified that, hey, look, until then, and like we said that if the wife and the husband, if they spend time alone, no one knows where they were, no one knows what they were doing. This is considered equal to them having relations. Okay, so the best thing is to maybe say, look, this is not going to happen until the wedding comes up. All right, that covers our topic for today. We have maybe 1 or 2 more sessions left in the topic of marriage itself. We're going to next talk about the wedding party, the walima. We're going to talk about the guidelines for husband and wife relationship with each other. We're also going to talk about matters that nullify the right of expenses and the share of nights. In some cases, something might happen in which case the husband may not be obligated anymore to pay for the financial expenses of his wife. What are those? We'll talk about that. After that, we will begin the chapters on divorce. And that is actually one of the key reasons why we are having this series, is to actually cover the issues of divorce in detail for the public, because that's where there's a lot of ignorance. But we want to know about it so we could avoid it, knowing that this is not where we want to go. But if we don't know about it, we sometimes mistakenly fall into those matters. So with that, we will end. Do we have any questions that we did not cover yet? Okay, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk, jazakumullahu khairan.